G'day guys, welcome back, and today of course we are here to review round 20. A lot of big games over the weekend, and we started with a big upset for a lot of people. Carlton up against Port Adelaide, and in a big second half blitz from the Power, they broke in front of the Blues, held them at bay, and in the end won by 14 points. Port Adelaide 79-65 to the Blues. There were a couple of injury concerns from this game. First one was Cunningham, who actually dislocated his shoulder in the first quarter, and he was subbed out soon after. Really unfortunate for him because it was the same shoulder that he has injured previously, so hopefully he's not out for too long because he's a really good utility player for the Blues. And on Port Adelaide's side, they did have Lachie Jones, who had an issue with his hamstring in the last quarter and was subbed out pretty soon after that. But let's get to the game itself. So Carlton did kick the first goal of this game, but Port Adelaide did keep in touch with the Blues throughout the first quarter, and at quarter time, Port Adelaide actually led by 4 points. Now, despite both teams trading a goal either way in the early stages of the second term, this is when Carlton started to really break away. The Blues kicked 6 goals in a row to break out to a 31-point lead late in the second term, but Port Adelaide did get a late goal to see the margin be reduced down to 25 points at half-time. Now, in the third quarter, it started off very slowly with no goals kicked between either side for the first 18 minutes of it, but then we saw Port Adelaide start to make their way back into this game. The Power kicked 3 goals to 1 in the third quarter to reduce the margin down to 10 points at three-quarter time, but Port Adelaide honestly could have been in front at this point, as they did kick 5 behinds in the third quarter as well. But in the last quarter, the Power really started to show their class around the footy. Not only did Port Adelaide keep the Blues goalless in the last quarter, but Port Adelaide kicked 4 goals of their own to run out winners by 14 points. Now, the real change in this game was not only the fact that Port Adelaide brought a lot of pressure in the second half, but they double-teamed Charlie Curnow. Now, yes, Carlton did only have a 5-day break compared to Port Adelaide, who have a 7-day break. And I understand there is a bit of a gap there, but Carlton did lead this game by 31 points in the second term and really shouldn't be losing that game. The fact that they were double-teaming Charlie Curnow in the second half with Berserk Thatcher and Aliria, Carlton had to change that game plan. They continued to bomb it on his head, Charlie Curnow, and he couldn't compete. Now, Mackay was out, and so was De Koning, so they only had Bidnet in the ruck, and they only had Charlie Curnow really to kick 2 up forward. But they have to find another avenue to goal here, and they tried to late in the game, but by then, Port Adelaide were just able to run it out pretty comfortably. So, Carlton, pretty disappointing in the end. They are really keeping that second spot alive for most teams, and the Swans right now probably feel pretty happy the fact that Carlton have started to drop off as well when they have. But let's move to the statistics in this game. Top scorer in the end was Charlie Curnow with the 113, along with Willem Drew. Ollie Wines with the 106, Nick Newman with the 100, Jason Horne-Francis with the 99, and then Sam Walsh with the 98. Now, of course, as we do every single week, guys, we get to the votes. We do a 3-2-1 voting system for every single game of the AFL season. And between the finals and the regular season and the finals bye, we'll be doing a live countdown of the Boundary Riders votes, which I've got in an Excel spreadsheet. It's been worked out all the way through the year. We've got a leader at the moment. They lead by 4 points. I'm not going to tell you though, because I think that's, adds to a bit of the theatre of it. And of course, at the end of the year, we'll have our second ever Boundary Riders medalist. Our first one was Zach Butters. Who knows if he's going to win it this year? We'll leave that one up to you guys to discover. But we'll get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Ollie Wines, 2 votes went to Jason Horne-Francis, and the 1 vote went to Willem Drew. So now to the first game on Saturday, guys. It was North Melbourne up against Geelong. And despite North Melbourne putting up a pretty big fight for the majority of the contest, in the end, the Cats were able to run away by pretty comfortable winners by 40 points. Geelong 106, North Melbourne 66. There was one injury concern from this game, which was Gary Rowan, who actually got subbed out in the third term due to a head clash with North Melbourne player and Tom Powell. So really unfortunate for him, but unfortunately he'll miss next week as well. But to the game itself, North Melbourne did start off very strongly, kicking the first 3 goals of the game, but Geelong slowly worked their way into the contest throughout the first quarter, and at quarter time, Geelong actually led by the 3 points. Now, North Melbourne would regain the lead early in the second quarter, but then the Cats would kick 3 goals throughout the second quarter, and Geelong, who actually took their chances when entering inside their forward 50, led by 14 points at half-time, but North Melbourne did actually enter their forward 50 quite a lot in the second term, but really couldn't take their chances. Now, Geelong did kick the first 2 goals of the second half, but to the credit of North Melbourne, they weren't going to die wondering, as they did reduce the margin to 10 points in the latter parts of the third quarter, but Geelong did kick 3 late goals in about the space of 3 minutes, and at three-quarter time led by 28 points. And despite the Kangaroos kicking the first goal of the final term, the Cats would put any chance of a comeback to bed, as in the end, Geelong ran out really comfortable winners by 40 points. So a great win from Geelong. I don't think many people are surprised by the result, to say the least. It was down in Tasmania. I did actually say this to my brother before putting the tips in, that I think North Melbourne do have a bit of a chance here because it is down in Tasmania. But in the end, Geelong just proved too strong. But let's get to the statistics in this game. And top scorer in the end was Tristan Cherry on the AFL Fantasy front with the 156, Tom Powell with the 122 along with Tom Stewart. We had Harry Sheasel with the 118, Jack Bowes with the 100 along with Jeremy Cameron. Now let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Tom Stewart, 2 votes went to Harry Sheasel, and the 1 vote went to Tristan Cherry. Now, the reason why Harry Sheasel's got votes here is, yes, he had 34 touches, brilliant game on disposals-wise. Harry Sheasel had 14 scoring involvements, and they only had 16 scoring shots North Melbourne, so that just shows how much influence he had in the game. Now, I did give it to Tom Stewart 3 votes, because I just thought he was the best player overall, but Harry Sheasel, what a couple of weeks he's having. I mean, if North Melbourne can start improving, could be a future Boundary Riders medalist, I'm going to be honest with you. But to the next game, we get to the Q Clash, the Gold Coast up against the Brisbane Lions. And this is actually a pretty close contest for the majority of the afternoon. But in the end, the Brisbane Lions broke away from the Suns and won by 28 points. 93 to the Brisbane Lions, 65 to the Gold Coast Suns. Now, the Lions did kick the first 2 goals of this game and started off quite strongly. But the Suns missed some crucial chances in the first quarter by kicking 2 goals, 6 to quarter time. And because of all the missed chances, the Lions actually led at the first change by 2 points. Now, both teams traded goals early in the second term, and with the Suns actually taking some of their chances, they were able to keep in touch with the Lions for the majority of the quarter. But with the Lions getting the last 2 goals of the second term, we did see the Lions lead by 17 points at half time. Now, the Gold Coast kicked the first 2 goals of the second half to reduce the margin to only 6 points, and it seemed like they were up for the fight. But then the Lions lifted their pressure as the quarter went on, and after kicking the final 2 goals of the third term, the margin was pushed back out to 19 points at 3-quarter time for Brisbane. But again, to the credit of the Suns, they weren't going to die wondering in this game. They kept in touch with the Lions and pushed them into the last quarter as they kicked the first 2 goals of the final term to get the margin into single figures. But in the end, the Lions just proved too strong. They had the lead pretty much for the majority of the day. And in the end, they kicked the last 3 goals of the final quarter to run out winners by 28 points. So funnily enough, this is actually the first loss from the Gold Coast Suns at home this year. I mean, it's a little bit weird because they're playing against their crosstown rivals, but a good win from the Brisbane Lions. I think I actually changed my tip stupidly and tipped the Gold Coast Suns here, trying to pick an upset, trying to potentially push back up into the tips, trying to get at the top of the tipping ladder, but really dumb decision to pick this game. And the Brisbane Lions becoming one of the Premiership favourites in the last 10 weeks. They have been brilliant, so a great win from them. Looking at the statistics on the AFL Fantasy front, though, Dane Zorko top score with the 139, Lachie Neale with the 129, Josh Dunkley with the 128, Darcy Wilmot with the 114, Sam Flanders with the 113, and then Jared Berry with the 106. Now let's get to the votes in this game, though. 3 votes went to Lachie Neale, 2 votes went to Dane Zorko, and the 1 vote went to Cam Rayner. After that, we get to St Kilda versus Essendon, and what a drop-off Essendon is going through right now. Real chance of missing the 8, and at the moment, it's probably the odds are that they're going to miss. St Kilda, what a massive performance from them in the third quarter. Really broke the game open with a 6-goal blitz, and in the end, St Kilda won by 53 points. St Kilda 108, Essendon 55. So Essendon actually started this game quite well. They kicked the first 2 goals of it, but the game quickly turned on its head as the Saints ran amok. The Saints kicked 5 goals in a row and led by 16 points at quarter time. Now, the Bombers kicked 3 goals in quick succession in the second term to set this game up for a big battle. And despite the Saints kicking the last 2 goals of the first half, the game felt really, really close. And at half-time, St Kilda only led by 9 points. But after coming out of the dugout from half-time, St Kilda just went on a massive spree. They kicked 6 goals in a row to take the lead over 40 points, and despite the Bombers stopping the rot late in the quarter, St Kilda still led by 43 points at 3-quarter time. And then the Saints just continued their merry way in the last quarter. They kicked 2 early goals to take the lead over 50 points, and in the end, the Bombers really didn't fire a shot in the second half, and the Saints ran out winners by 53 points. So I think I said it a couple of weeks ago that it's going to be embarrassing if the Bombers don't make the finals, and I still stick with that statement. This is really unfortunate from them. They have been pretty well embarrassed against St Kilda. They shouldn't be losing by 50-odd points by a team that's in the bottom 4, basically. They only jumped out of the 4 after this win. And St Kilda, I mean, great win. They've got to keep on fighting. You know, they're obviously not going to be able to put a dent in the finals for themselves, but they can definitely put a dent into other teams' finals hopes. So a good win from them. Essendon, at the moment, they really don't deserve to play finals. They're getting battered around the footy right now, and it's pretty embarrassing. But let's get to the statistics in this game. Rowan Marshall, top score with the 133. We had Xavier Dersma with the 114. Wanganeen Miller with the 113. Jack Steele with the 112. Cooper Sharman with the 109. And then Jack Sinclair with the 104. But let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Jack Steele. 2 votes went to Cooper Sharman. Brilliant performance from him. And the 1 vote to Rowan Marshall. Now, I loved Cooper Sharman's game. He did kick 3 goals. Pretty good performance from a forward. But his 10 mark marks around the footy. He has really lifted since Max King's gone out of the team. So great performance from Cooper Sharman. I think it's the first votes he's got in Bounty Riders medals history. So congratulations to him, and a great game in the end from Cooper Sharman. So on to the first game on Saturday night was the Demons up against the Giants. And in a topsy-turvy sort of contest, the Giants were able to hold on in the last quarter by 2 points against the Demons. 85 the Giants, Demons on 83. Now this game started off really strongly for the Demons as they had so much of the territory battle in their forward half in the first quarter. But we only saw a goal to either side in the first half of the first quarter. But then the Demons would kick 4 goals in a row in the latter parts of the first term, and at quarter time, the Demons led by 27 points, which was their game-high lead. Now, the Giants started well in the second term, really started to work themselves into the contest, and Melbourne were okay in the contest at times, but once the ball got out of the inner circle of stoppages, the Giants looked a lot faster and stronger. And after the Giants kicked 5 goals to 1 in the second term, the Giants reduced the margin to only a 3-point deficit at half-time. Now, despite the dominance of the Giants in the third term, where at one point they had 15 inside 50s to only 2 or 3 for Melbourne, they missed so many countless opportunities. Not so much on the scoreboard, but just continuing to bomb it long just wasn't good enough and didn't really give the likes of Jesse Hogan, Toby Green much of a chance up forward. Luckily, they did kick 3 of the last 4 goals of the quarter to lead by 3 points at 3-quarter time. Now, the Giants started really strongly in the final term to pile on 4 quick goals in the space of about 7 minutes to almost put this game to bed, but the Demons fought their way back into the contest in the last quarter as they did kick 4 goals in response to get back within 2 points, but in the end the Giants were able to hold on by that 2-point margin. So a great win from the Giants in the end. Melbourne did play pretty well, but it probably does mean now they're going to miss finals with that loss. They really had to win this game, and GWS, they haven't had a very good record at the MCG, so it's a really good win from them. Looking at the statistics of this game, top scorer on the AFL fantasy front, bit of a surpriser, was James Peatling with the 133, Lockie Whitfield with the 127, Finn Callaghan with the 121, Brent Daniels with the 116, Tom Green with the 105, and then Toby Green with the 103. Now let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Brent Daniels, 2 votes went to Toby Green, and the 1 vote went to Jesse Hogan. After that, we get to the 59th derby, I believe. Fremantle up against the West Coast Eagles. And despite a very good first half from the West Coast, in the end, the Fremantle Dockers showed themselves to be too strong and ran out winners by 35 points. Fremantle 110, West Coast 75. Now, there's one injury concern from this game, which was Zane True. This was at the opening bounce of the game. He received a stray elbow from his teammate in Bailey Williams to the head and was actually subbed out with concussions. That was really unfortunate for him. Now let's get to the game itself though. Despite the Dockers kicking the first goal of the derby, the Eagles were really up for the fight in this game. And despite the dominance from Fremantle mids in the first quarter at their stoppage, the Eagles led at quarter time by 13 points. And the Eagles kicked the first goal of the second term to extend their lead in this game. It had some shades of the derby that we had earlier in the year where West Coast pretty well dominated Fremantle after quarter time. And despite the West Coast Eagles not exactly dominating, they still kicked the last 2 goals of the second term to lead by 19 points at half time. Now, I don't know if Fremantle got a rev up from Justin Longmuir at half-time, but they came out to fight in the third quarter. Not only did Fremantle keep the Eagles goalless in the third term, but overturned a 19-point deficit at half-time into a 21-point lead at 3-quarter time. Now, I do have to mention, late in the third quarter, we saw one of the bigger melees that we've seen in recent years. And even though it's not exactly a great look for the game, I still think it was good to see that a rivalry that's been there for so long actually showed some sort of fight. But back to the game itself, in the final quarter, the Dockers kicked the 2 early goals in the final term to really put any chance of the Eagles coming back out of their grasp. And even though the Eagles did break their goal drought in the second half, halfway through the quarter, the game was well and truly done, and Fremantle in the end won by 35 points. So a good win from Fremantle. I don't think there's really too many surprises about this. Fremantle jumped back into the top 4, which I don't think many people would have seen at the start of the year. So a great win from Freo in the end, and they deserve so much credit for how their season is going. But moving to the statistics of this game, of course, Andrew Brayshaw top score with the 115, Elliot Yeo with the 1, Tom Cole with the 109, Tim Kelly with the 101, Caleb Sarong with the 100, and then Bailey Williams with the 93. Now let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Caleb Sarong, 2 votes to Andrew Brayshaw, and the 1 vote went to Hayden Young. So on Sunday, guys, the first game was Collingwood up against the Tigers, and Collingwood led by about 4 or 5 goals for the majority of the game. The Tigers fought back a little bit in the last quarter, but in the end, Collingwood won by 26 points. 93 to Collingwood, 67 to the Tigers. There was one injury concern from this game, which was Tim Taranto. He was on and off the ground for the majority of the game with a concern on his back, and eventually he was subbed out just before 3-quarter time. So interesting to see if he will be playing next week. But in this game, it started off pretty goal for goal for the start of it, as the Tigers midfield were very impressive in the early stages of this game. But as the quarter went on, the Pies really started to work their way into the game. And at quarter time, they held a 24-point lead. And the Tigers struggled to really have any sort of meaningful ball in their forward half throughout the majority of the second term, which saw the Pies lead by 37 points in the later parts of the second term. But 2 late goals to the Tigers saw them reduce the margin to 25 points at half time. But in the third term, the Pies erased the goals that the Tigers scored before half time with 2 of their own in response pretty quickly into the third term. And despite the Tigers having a lot more inside 50s in the middle parts of the third quarter, Pies regained control at 3-quarter time and led by 41 points. But like I said, to the credit of the Tigers, they did put some fight up in the last term with Richmond winning the final term. But in the end, it was all too much for the Tigers. And in the end, the Pies got a deserved win as they ran out by 26 points. But again, not really a huge surprise that the Pies went on to win this game. And it does keep their finals hopes a little bit alive now with a couple of results going their way throughout the weekend. So a good win from Collingwood, but really not much to talk about in the end. Going to the statistics of this game, though, Nick Dacos top scored with the 128, Nathan Broad with the 121, Josh Dacos with the 111, Darcy Cameron with the 105, Loston with the 99, and then Jaden Short with the 91. But let's get to the votes in this game. My brother watched the majority of this one, so he gave the votes for this. He went 3 votes, Nick Dacos, 2 votes to Darcy Cameron, and the 1 vote to Jamie Elliott. Now, Jamie Elliott didn't do exactly a whole lot in the game on the surface of the stats sheet, but he was brilliant, just helping out so much with the scorer involvement for his team, and 4 goal assists as well. So a great performance from Jamie Elliott. Probably one of the best games he's had all year. So also on Sunday, guys, we had the Swans up against the Bulldogs, and the Bulldogs are really starting to stake their claims as a finals threat, and maybe even more than that, as they smashed the Swans in the end. The Swans did fight back a little bit more in the last quarter just to make the scoreboard look a little bit more respectable, but the Dogs won in the end by 39 points. The Bulldogs 87, the Swans 48. Now, another injury concern for the Sydney Swans this week. This one, it was Lewis Melican, who came off in the second term with a hamstring injury, and he was subbed out soon after. So the Swans stocks down back are starting to diminish a little bit more now. Obviously, Rampy last week, now Melican. So they're really going to have to look into their depth going into the last month of the season. But to the game itself, the Dogs were absolutely brilliant in the first quarter. Their pressure game was absolutely insane, and the Swans seemingly could not get a clean possession for the entire quarter. And despite the Dogs missing some chances earlier in the term, they will quickly straighten up, and at quarter time kept the Swans goalless and led by 34 points. Now the Swans started better in the second term as they kicked their first goal pretty early in the quarter and got their second pretty soon after, but the Dogs quickly wrestled back control, and despite the Swans being better in the second quarter, the Dogs would extend their lead by 1 point going into the halftime break, leading by 36 points. And moving into the third term, it became a lot more of a scrap in the third quarter, and even though the Swans threatened at times to try and get back into the game, the Dogs made it so hard for the Swans to score, and when they actually did score Sydney, it was such a struggle. And later in the third term, the Dogs started to really break away and led by 44 points at 3-quarter time. So the game was pretty much done at that point, but the Swans did put up a little bit more fight in the final term. And even though the Dogs had this game won, the Swans did win the last quarter, but the game was well and truly done, and the Dogs won by 39 points. So the Dogs right now, even though they had that little hiccup against Port Adelaide a few weeks ago, they've beaten 3 true contenders in the last 3 weeks: the Blues, the Cats, and now the Swans. So they're really setting themselves up quite nicely. You would expect them to make the 8 at this point. They have a pretty good run home as well. In Sydney, their form has really dropped off. I mean, obviously they're still on top, and they're still sitting in a really pretty spot, so you can't question them too much, but you want to be hitting your good form around this point, and the Swans simply haven't. So they really need to start fix that up. Maybe they have to make a couple of changes. They've kept a pretty true squad for the majority of the season, but I think right now they need to find that team before they hit the finals. But moving to the statistics of this game, Matt Roberts top scored with the 138, Adam Treloar with the 125, Errol Goulden with the 114 along with Ed Richards, Brodie Grundy with the 109, and then Isaac Heaney with the 108. Now let's get to the votes in this game. 3 votes went to Jamara Ugle-Hagan, 2 votes went to Adam Treloar, and the 1 vote went to Ed Richards. Now Jamara didn't hit the top AFL fantasy scores, but he has been brilliant the last few weeks. And I felt like when this game was up to be won, Jamara really stood up. So a great performance from him. He deserved the 3 votes today. Let's get to our final game of round 20, guys. It was Adelaide up against Hawthorn. After a really high-scoring first quarter, Hawthorn really started to break away after quarter time, and in the end, Hawthorn ran away massive winners by 66 points with a real percentage booster, 124 to the Hawks, 58 to the Crows. Now, let's get to the game itself. This game started pretty goal for goal to start the first quarter, but the Crows did miss some crucial chances in the opening term as they kicked 5 goals, 6 to Hawthorn, 5 straight goals. So with those 6 behinds, the Crows did lead at quarter time. Now, in the second term, we actually saw a pretty slow start to it. No goals were kicked for the early part of the quarter until Hawthorn were able to break the drought and actually get themselves back in front. But Hawthorn really broke away in the second half of the second term as they would pile on 3 quick goals to take the lead by 21 points at half time. Now, the Crows seemed to be in this game up to that point, but in the second half, the Hawks started to really break away. They kicked 3 quick goals in the space of about 5 minutes to almost put this game to bed. The game was a bit of a standstill for the majority of the rest of the third term until a late goal to Hawthorn saw them lead by 42 points at 3-quarter time. And the Crows were kept goalless in the third quarter, but moving into the last term, the Hawks just went on a massive spree of goals. They kicked 6 more goals in a row to take the lead up to 78 points, but the Crows did kick the final 2 goals of the game to bring back the margin to 66 points. So really disappointing from the Adelaide Crows. I think some people would have thought they would have had a chance in this game, but Hawthorn, what form they are in right now. They're just outside the 8 right now. We'll take a look at the ladder in a minute, but a great result for the Hawks. They're really charging now, and maybe they can make the 8 as we get towards the end of the season. But let's look at the statistics of this game. Top scorer at the end was Lachie Scholl with the 120, Rory Laird with the 113, Riley O'Brien with the 112, Connor McDonald with the 110, Jake Saligo with the 89, along with Dylan Moore. But let's get to the votes in this game. Because I was watching the Swans game, my brother gave the votes for this one. He has gone in the end 3 votes Jarman Impey, 2 votes Connor McDonald, and the 1 vote to Will Day. But with that being said, guys, let's get to the ladder at the end of round 20. The Swans are still sitting on top with only a 6-point lead now. It's one of the lower leads they've had for at least 4 or 5 weeks now. We have a new team in second. It's the Brisbane Lions, arguably the Premiership favourites at this stage. The Dockers jumped into third with their win. Carlton dropped right down to 4th with their loss to Port Adelaide. And they're in the logjam with the Giants on 48 in 5th. The Cats in the power. And then in 8th spot, for the first time since I believe round 6, the Bulldogs have jumped into the 8 with 44 points. Hawthorn are sitting in 9th with their massive win. The Bombers have dropped out of the 8, surprisingly. Wouldn't have seen that about 6 weeks ago. But the Bombers have dropped in 10th spot. The Melbourne Demons probably out of the finals race now with their sort of form. They are in 11th. Collingwood, a slight chance, but their percentage is really poor. They are in 12th. The Gold Coast are in 13th. St Kilda with their big win against the Bombers moving to 14th. The Crows drop into the bottom 4 and 15th. West Coast 16th. North Melbourne 17th. And right down the bottom are the Richmond Tigers. But guys, that is all I have for you in today's episode of the review. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you're watching over on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. We are growing like crazy. So thank you so much for the support. And over on Spotify, we're growing a little bit as well. So I really do appreciate the support over there. If you are over on Spotify, make sure to leave a follow so you're notified in every single episode. And of course, leave us 5 stars because, I don't know, I guess I asked really nicely. But guys, thank you again for listening. Thank you for watching. And we'll catch you all next week.